Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about databases. Of course, it's a broad topic, just like every one of the topics I've actually touched upon so far. You can barely skim the surface in these videos, but hopefully, as I do more of these, I can get into more specifics to the level of detail I would ideally like to get into at some point. But there has to be a beginning somewhere, and hopefully, this is not a terrible one. So databases, right? Within databases, I want to talk about migrations today, actually. Not just databases in general, but just migrations as a particular line item. So I want to take an example, slightly different from the usual restaurants. I don't come super prepared to these when I do these videos. I just feel like talking about something and I'm just picking up a machine. So bear with me if I end up collecting my thoughts after I get to the videos, right? Um, so the example I want to take today is cricket. I want to talk about migration, but in the context of cricket as an example. So cricket, for those folks who don't know, it's a sport, a very popular sport. It originated in England, and it's played in a handful of countries, right? So if you're not familiar, it's very much like quite like baseball. With that background, so let's take an example to understand what migration means in the context of some of the items I want to discuss. Um, Say you're building an application and you want a persistent layer, and you choose to go with a database. For the purposes of this discussion, we don't honestly care what it is, right? What kind of database, the vendor, the product, none of it really matters. Just that there is a persistent layer and we need to store data somewhere. So cricket, let's say we take test cricket, a form of cricket as an example, which is the oldest form of cricket. It's probably 100, maybe a couple hundred years old at least. Um, Again, some background about the sport. I love cricket, particularly that form of cricket. It's played over 5 days actually. Yeah, so it used to be six, and I think they felt it was a little too long, so they made it five. So day one, you start, you play for 2 hours. Obviously, each team has 11 batsmen or batters, or 11 players. Some of them are batters, some are bowlers, like pitchers, for instance, in baseball language. The first day, there's 3 sessions per day, 2 hours per session. You come, you play for 2 hours, take a lunch break, come back, play for a couple of hours, and then go for tea. And then 2 hours later, that's the end of day, right? And in between these 2 hour sessions, you have a 10-minute drinks break, like for soda, and not soda, like, just to rehydrate yourself. So they go back and play on day two, day three, day four, and day five, and hopefully there is a result within those days, meaning either one of the team wins. But it's also possible that you cannot arrive at a conclusion, so it would be called a draw. So it's a little funny when you say it that way, but it's a very nice, interesting sport, right? So let's say back to the topic, databases and migration. You're designing a system that has something to do with cricket, the players, the cricket grounds, etc., etc. So you have an application that's up and running. You designed a schema. It has a number of database objects to store a variety of different kinds of information. One that stores the different kinds of test grounds, like say in England, for instance. There's Edgbaston, there's Lords, there's Leeds, plenty of beautiful cricket grounds. And if you're in Australia, it's like Sydney, the Melbourne cricket ground, so on, right? So you have database objects that store this information, and you have other objects that store player information, and you have variety of different objects to support your application. You have this app that's up and running and it's production, all is well, right? Now, let's say there comes a time when a new cricket ground comes into existence. Like they build a beautiful ground in Scotland, and that becomes eligible for Test cricket to be played in. So you have to make some changes. There's no application changes per se in this example. It's just that there is a new ground that came into existence, a cricket ground. So you have to make some updates to your underlying database objects. So when you go look up and you're assigning games or matches to grounds, this new ground shows up, right? So that's a kind of migration, right? So it's you're making some data updates to essentially your existing schema. It's one of the more straightforward migrations. You add a new record or a new document into your table or collection or whatever, and now when somebody logs in, they can see this new Cricut ground. So that's one form of migration. The probably the easiest one, right? At least in the list of things we're going to discuss today. The second type of migration, for that, let's go back to our to the example, right? The sport. The change now is like, okay, there are a number of teams that play cricket, and you have to qualify, you have to become eligible to play like test cricket. There's a cricketing board like International Cricket Council that approves and yada yada yada, right? So let's say Ireland becomes a new test cricketing nation. Now that requires a change because the Irish players would need to log into the system, do whatever it is that they need to be able to do. This is a slightly bigger change, right? Because you're not adding just data entries, but you're creating new objects. Perhaps you have a table for or a collection, doesn't matter what, depending on the type of database you're using, NoSQL or SQL. You're going to create a new document or collection that stores the cricket grounds that happen to be in Ireland. In our example, right, it happens to be a new object. You might implement it differently, but I want to take that particular example. Now this requires a different kind of change. Let's discuss what the change is. But I'm going to break these videos down into smaller pieces so it makes it easy for me to upload them. So I'm going to stop here and pick up in the next video. See you shortly. Bye-bye.